Thank you for buying books with us and supporting not only our store, but also amazing authors like Elaine, so we can continue to make really cool events like this one possible. Now, let me tell you a little bit about tonight's special guest. Elaine Sciolino is the author of the New York Times bestseller, The Only Street in Paris, as well as the same, La Seduction. I know I didn't pronounce that one right.
Your Italian's better than your French.
That's fair. And of course, Adventures in the Louvre, or the Louvre, as I will be saying, because I'm going to stick to my American pronunciation for French. She is the former Paris bureau chief for the New York Times, where she continues as a contributing writer. Tonight, we're here to celebrate Adventures in the Louvre, how to fall in love with the world's greatest museum. A former New York Times Paris bureau chief explores the Louvre, offering an intimate journey of discovery and revelation. The Louvre is the most famous museum in the world, attracting millions of visitors every year with its masterpieces. In Adventures in the Louvre, Elaine immerses herself in this magical space and helps us fall in love with what was once a forbidding fortress. Exploring galleries, basements, rooftops, and gardens, Sciolino demystifies the Louvre, introducing us to our favorite artworks, both legendary and overlooked, and to the people who are the museum's lifeblood. The curators, the artisans producing frames and engravings, the builders overseeing restorations, the firefighters protecting the aging structure. Blending investigative journalism, travelogue, history, and memoir, Sciolino walks her readers through the museum's front gates and immerses them in its irresistible, engrossing world of beauty and culture. Adventures in the Louvre reveals the secrets of this grand monument of Paris and basks in its timeless, seductive power. Please welcome Elaine Sciolino.
Is this on? Yeah. Welcome, everybody. You get to sit in the front row. Yeah, it's like, as my close friend Paul said, it's like church, that you get front row, you gotta sit, it's terrible. An author who has to look at an empty front row, it's really quite bad. So thank you, and you're smiling, you're gonna laugh at my jokes, this is great. Thanks. Sir, do you want a seat?
Is this John King's reading here?
No, it's not John King's reading here. It's another thing, it's Elaine Sciolino's, but I'm funny. I'm funnier than John King, so believe me. I don't even know John King, but I'm sure I'm funny. Okay. So I have a confession to make. I can't sit on this thing. It reminds me of a bar stool, and I never was good at bars. The Louvre is an impossible museum. I don't know, how many of you have been to the Louvre? My gosh, almost everybody. How many of you had a very difficult time at the Louvre? Yeah, okay, fine. Would you like to sit? No, don't want to seat?
Sat all day.
Sat all day? Okay. Oh, okay. Those are your seats. Yes, there's my husband's cousins. They're coming. You gotta fill the place with family. It's like you never know who's gonna come up. Okay. Okay. Some of these people, some people complain that the Met in New York is a difficult museum, but at least it was built as a museum. The Louvre was not, and as we heard from Myra, it started out as a fortress. So this is what the Louvre looked like. Those of you who've been to the Louvre since it was renovated in the 1990s might have seen this remnant of the 12th century Louvre. But I bet you haven't seen this remnant, which I got to see because I went into the basement of the Louvre with the firefighters, the sapeurs-pompiers, who live at the Louvre and protect the Louvre. And this part of the 12th century Louvre may end up disappearing when President Macron redoes the Louvre according to his new Renaissance plan. After the Louvre was a fortress, it then became a palace. It became a palace for kings, and for a while the kings actually lived in the Louvre until Louis XIV decided he hated living in Paris, and he hated living in the Louvre, and he hated Parisians too, so that's why he built Versailles. Now, all of the books about the Louvre were written either by art historians or by tour guides, and I'm neither. I'm a journalist, and so I decided to look at the Louvre as a reporter. I'm also an old war reporter, Lebanon since 1978, Iran, Iraq since 1980. And so I decided to treat the Louvre as a battlefield and that I had to conquer. So I went in as a correspondent geared for battle, which meant never go to the Louvre with an empty or a full bladder. Don't think you're gonna stay in one of those Airbnbs in Montmartre and, just, I think I'll walk to the Louvre today and then I'll just get something to eat and go to the toilet when I get there. No, it's not gonna work. You're gonna be frustrated. There's nothing good to eat in the Louvre and you'll wait at least 15 minutes, especially if you're a woman, to find a toilet, if you're lucky. So my goal with this book was to make everybody feel like an insider without doing homework. And what did I conclude? I concluded that the Louvre is way too big. How many of you have experienced the Louvre this way, waiting outside the pyramid to get in, right? So already you're frustrated because you have your ticket, your time ticket, and you see this line and you say, I have to wait an hour to even get in. It's too big. It's really 9 museums in one. And you don't know that because nobody tells you that. And if you ever try to find anything on that map that they give you that's like goes from here to the ground, you will just get lost. I mean, the pyramid, which was built in 1989, is showing its age. It leaks. I once saw a pail in the middle of the floor of the pyramid because it was leaking. The Louvre leaks. Sometimes they have to move paintings out because either the walls leak or the roof leaks. So Notre Dame was hit by fire, and the sapeurs-pompiers, the firefighters, had to use water to save Notre Dame. But the Louvre is really the enemy of the Louvre is water. It's also been renovated probably about 20 times. Now think about your own house. If you renovated your house and put additions on 20 times, it would be impossible to figure out where anything even is. And that's one of the problems with the Louvre. I just want to give you a few statistics. There are more than 30,000 works of art on display at the Louvre, out of about 500,000 works, most of which are in storage. And if you stand for 15 seconds in front of every work of art, it would take you about 145 hours. There are 400 rooms in the Louvre, and if you walked through every room, you would get 9 miles of exercise or about 18,000 steps, which is absolutely terrific for my husband, cousin Lou, because he's got to do more exercise, his doctor tells him. So that's what my goal is, to get Lou back to Paris so that he can walk steps in the Louvre. 2,300 employees, 900 security cameras, 25 different levels, which is one reason why it's so hard, because there's not enough elevators. About 2,500 doors and more than 4,000 keys. The Louvre is also too crowded, and many of you may have had this experience. How many of you have felt this way? Yep, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, most everybody who's been to the Louvre has had to face Mona Lisa. I mean, there are 2 types of visitors. The ones who come to see Mona Lisa, 80% of first-time visitors come to see Mona Lisa, and the ones who will come to see anything else. So how am I going to conquer this world with all these people who want to see the Mona Lisa? So as I said, I treated the Louvre as a reporter, and I decided to ask certain questions. I thought to myself, well, the pyramid, how the heck do you clean the glass of the pyramid? So who would you go and interview? The window washers, right? And there is one of the window washers who I interviewed. There he is strapped up to the top, cleaning the windows. And then who else would you interview? The firefighters. This is me and Capitaine Eke, And there we are at the top. He took me to the roof of the Louvre. I mean, could you imagine what a great thing that is to go with this really handsome. He's got a wife and 5 kids, and they're much too beautiful. He's probably young enough to be my son too. But he was really strong and strappy when he made me go. I had to go on one of those ladders, you know, it's like, you know, it's stuck to the side of the building, and you have to climb up vertically. Yeah, I did it though. I did it for Capitani K because this is what I got to see. I mean, isn't that the coolest thing? That kind of view. So stick with me. The next time you go to the Louvre, you know, I'll introduce you to the firefighters. Maybe one of them will take you up there. I interviewed the night security guards who still believe in ghosts. I mean, isn't that cool that there are ghosts in the Louvre? You know, and one of the main areas for the ghosts is in the area where there is a mummy that is all by himself because he has to be respected because it's a real mummy. But the aura around the mummy and the animal mummies is quite palpable if you talk to these security guards. I also talked to the gardeners because the Tuileries Gardens is in the Louvre. It belongs to the Louvre. And so this actually is not, it looks like a tree, but it's not. It's a bronze sculpture by Pennone. And we don't usually treat the Tuileries as a wonderful artistic extension of the Louvre, but there are more than 200 wonderful sculptures outside of the Louvre. You know, walking through the tapestries room one day, I started thinking to myself, do they have moths here? You know, I don't know. Do any of you have moths? Yeah. You know, if you have moths, clothing moths, they are really hard to get rid of. So I'm thinking, what do they do with the tapestries so they don't get eaten by moths? And it turns out it's a real problem. And because it's France, they don't just have like one little moth. They have maybe a dozen different kinds of little, they call them bête beasts, you know, that range from these tiny little things all the way to these big beetles that attack the tapestries. But that was a fun thing to do. I mean, who would think to go talk to the moth lady? So I talked to restorers, architects, tour guides, tourists, and one special person I interviewed was Sebastian Allard, who is the director of all the paintings department. And he told me one day that Mona Lisa is so important that people write to the Mona Lisa. They don't just write to the museum saying, you know, I've studied the Mona Lisa and I'd like to talk to you, but they actually write to the Mona Lisa. So one day I made friends with the librarian for the Mona Lisa and saw all of the letters to the Mona Lisa. By the way, I have all of the letters to the Mona Lisa, so if any of you are doing a dissertation on the Mona Lisa, come and see me because I have all these. And here are these letters, you know. Ma chère Lisa. This postcard comes from Warsaw. And then you can also see this little kid saying, and I really hope I could go and meet you. You've got lots of damages, but you are still okay. Here is a picture I tried to draw you. Okay, so I also discovered that an engineer for fun, this was years ago, decided to collect all sorts of kitsch about the Mona Lisa. Now this guy was really serious. He didn't just collect like 100 or 200 pieces of, you know, socks or keychains or magnets. He collected 11,000 Mona Lisa objects. There aren't even Mona Lisa condoms, and one size fits all in case any of you are interested. Now, since this is probably PG-13 group, I did not bring a picture of the condoms, but I have some other pictures. The Louvre stuck all of these pieces of kitsch locked it in a closed little storage space. but I got in to see them all. So you can see some of Monsieur Margot's wonderful kitsch collection. You know, his Mona Lisa watch collection and his Della Robbia's Mona Lisas too. This is good for you. My cousins who have all this wonderful pottery. Wouldn't this be cool on one of your shelves? Huh? No? Yeah? More? Yeah? You like this? Now, I'll try to find one for you the next time I go through some of the streets. Okay. So, I asked Sebastian Allard, the guy who's the head of paintings, about the Mona Lisa, and he made a face. And I said, Sebastian, you really don't like the Mona Lisa, do you? And he said, I really don't. There's a lot of paintings that are better than the Mona Lisa. I said, there are? And I said, yeah. And I said, will you show me some? And he said, yeah. So one day, he revealed to me his paintings that he likes better than the Mona Lisa. So these are a couple for you, and I'm going to do a little contest, and if you can identify who the painter is, I'm going to give you this frame-ready illustrated map of the Louvre. Thank you for, who was laughing at me? This is great. I wanted you to come with me on my road trip. You are great. These two right here, yeah, they're great. Thank you very much. They're not even my cousins. They're laughing more than my cousins are. Okay, so you ready for this? You gotta be ready, okay, because somebody's gonna win this prize. Who knows who painted this? Oh, come on. At the Harvard bookstore last night, there must have been 5 people who knew the answer to this. No, not Renoir. Who else? Rembrandt. You got it, Paul. And I didn't even give you the cheat sheet before. He's an old friend. Okay, now you ready for the next one? This is Rembrandt's Bathsheba at her bath. You know, she's just gotten the letter from King David that he wants her to come to him, but she's married to one of King David's soldiers, so does she commit adultery and go with the king, or does she risk her life by saying no? By the way, you go to the Richelieu wing to go to see her, no one is around her, and you can sit and have her all to yourself. Okay, ready? Who said Vermeer? Wait, I got a lot of people saying Vermeer. All right, okay. So there's 3, because you sat in the front row, and there's 3 of you in the front row, and you all said it at the same time. But are you together? No, you're separate, okay. Because I don't want you double teaming each other either. Okay, the 3 who said Vermeer but the other ones who said Vermeer, you get another chance with another one, okay? Okay. Now, Sebastian also said to me, well, there's a man in here who I think is absolutely beautiful. And I think he's as beautiful as the Mona Lisa. And here he is. Anyone know who painted this picture? Or what his name is? Yes, sir? Titian! You got it. Yeah, all right. Yeah, here you go. You cheated? Why did you cheat?
Because I heard that your lecture online.
Oh, wait a second. Wait, no, that's not fair. You heard my lecture online. Wait, should I give it to him anyway? Yeah, okay, we'll give it to him anyway. You know why we'll give it to him anyway? Because he confessed. He admitted his sin, so that's okay. Okay, the thing about this is Titian's Man with a Glove. It's in the same room as the Mona Lisa. In fact, if you look at the Mona Lisa seems to be looking at the Titian, but he's always by himself because people just pass by to get to Mona Lisa and they never look at him. And he truly is beautiful. In fact, Dame Judi Dench, the British actress, said on a BBC interview once that if she ever were stranded on a desert island, she would want to take him with her because she just would like him hanging around. Now, I think he's wonderful, he's beautiful, but he's a little too pretty for me. He's just, if I'm on a desert island, I want someone who's going to go into war mode with me, and we got to save ourselves, right? We got to go hunting and gathering and kill wild beasts and stuff. So I have a different favorite, which I'm going to show you right now, and I will guess that nobody's going to guess him. Ready? You ready for my guide? Who I'm gonna take with me to a desert island? Anybody know? Anybody at all? No? Think Sicily. Okay, everybody's thinking. No, that's good. At Caravaggio, that was a good choice. Good, but no. This is Antonella da Messina, 15th century. He's a man with a scar over his left lip. He's the il condottiere, which can be a mercenary or a warrior. And this is what I wrote in my book about him. His eyes stare through you with the hard look of the Sicilian South that some of my ancestors had. You want to touch the scar above his upper lip and ask him to tell you the story behind it. Few visitors stop to look at him, so he often stands alone. Sebastian Allard once told me that this painting suggests that Antonella da Messina was as talented as Leonardo da Vinci. So I call my Sicilian condottiere the undiscovered Mona Lisa. No one ever looks at him. He's all alone. So next time you go to the Louvre, go and see him. He's right outside the Mona Lisa room. So let me share with you a couple of stories and discoveries along the way. Okay, everybody knows this statue, right? This is one of the superstars. You got Mona Lisa, you've got the Winged Victory of Samothrace. You see that little feather that's sticking out that doesn't lie flat against the wing? It sticks out. That feather was only added in 2014 because you're laughing. This is great. I love it. I haven't even told the joke yet. A guy named Ludovic Logier, who is the conservator, the curator for ancient Egyptian art, found all of these pieces of the Winged Victory in drawers when they were restoring the statue. And one day he found this feather, and he was trying to figure out, where does this feather belong? I mean, it's weird. You know, the Winged Victory, she's really an Ungapachka put together kind of statue, because the right wing was a 19th century add-on. It doesn't really fit, and they really, they negotiated and they debated whether they should just take off the right arm, and then they decided that would be too dramatic. But Ludovic is stuck with this feather and trying to figure out what to do with it. And one day he had this eureka moment, and he realized that that feather fit onto this wing. And at first it seemed very weird, because why would there have been this feather sticking out like that on the Winged Victory as she's trying to land? But it seems that real birds, when they're about ready to land, often stick out a feather right before landing. So I think we should call this the Ludovic Logier feather. Okay, another one of my favorite scenes. Venus de Milo. Everybody looks at her from the front, right? You know, you got all these people taking pictures from the front. But the best thing to do is to walk behind her. And I think that, because I think she's much more seductive from behind, and that garment looks as if it's just about ready to fall off. And I often think that she has to be the source of inspiration for every young guy who wears low-cut jeans. Now, you can choose just about any subject and find it in the Louvre. People often say to me, what do I do with my kids in the Louvre? You know, I gotta take kids to the Louvre. They're gonna be bored, you know, after about 5 minutes. And I just say, bribe them. You know, tell them that you will pay them huge amounts of money for any cat or dog that they will find. And then maybe even pay them more if they find something weird, like a unicorn or a serpent. And if they can find the cat mummy, then that maybe even is worth like $20. So what other subjects are there in the Louvre that would, you know, like you got a you've got a teenage daughter who really doesn't want to go to the Louvre, and you offer to give her a lot of money, and you say, let's just go look at shoes in the Louvre. And don't those shoes look as if they could be worn today? I mean, aren't they absolutely gorgeous? Yeah, there's a whole book. I have a whole picture book just on shoes in the Louvre. So you think of any subject at all, you can find it in the Louvre. Food in the Louvre. You know, you're hungry, go look for food. Who knows who painted this painting? Anybody? The master of still lives in the Louvre? Oh boy, I think you all need a trip to the Louvre. Who did somebody say?
No, I said Philistines.
Philistine? No, I think that we should all go to the Louvre. You know what, maybe I should set up another, after I finish this book tour, I should set up a little business with a tour guide. Elaine's Louvre, okay? What do you think? You want to do it?
Yes.
Okay. This is called La Brioche, and it's by Chardin, who was considered the master of still lifes. And what I decided to do one day is to invite Guy Savoy. Has anybody ever eaten at Guy Savoy's restaurant? Okay. You know the famous truffle artichoke soup served with a brioche that he took 2 years to master. So this guy is the king of the perfect brioche that you slather with unsalted butter, and then you dip it into your soup. So I wanted Guy Savoy to see the brioche. So you've got Chardin, the most controlled still life master, and Sebastian Allard, who's this very particular curator, with Guy Savoy. And Guy Savoy takes one look at this brioche in this painting, and he looks at Sebastian and he says, "The brioche is burnt." And I thought Sebastian Allard was going to have a heart attack, because suddenly his master of control, Chardin, has a flawed brioche. And it made Sebastian think about this painting in a completely different way. But this is an important lesson for all of us, because it underscores that Guy Savoy, who knows nothing about it, can look at a painting and relate to it and have a partage or a sharing with this work of art and feel something, which is the key to all of us looking at art. So if you're a history buff, what do you find in the Louvre? This is the head of a lion by Géricault, the 19th century painter. But did you know that the Louvre is the guardian of paintings and works of art that were stolen during World War II, mostly from Jewish families, and are still orphaned? And this is one of the works of art that is in the Louvre. It doesn't belong to the Louvre. And unless you can look at the little initials that say MNR and know that represents that belongs to the collection of récupération. I mean, you would not know. You would just think that belongs to the Louvre. Now, what the Louvre has done in the last few years is it's taken 2 rooms and filled it with about 30 paintings that were recuperated, were from World War II, that are still trying to find their rightful owners. Now, you say to yourself, you know what, I want to find women in the Louvre. You know, there are few women artists in the Louvre. Only 25 of some 3,600 painters were women. And even Laurence Descartes noted this, who's the director of the Louvre, noted this in one of her first speeches, saying, how can museums claim universalism when entire sections of society are not represented in their collection or publics? So you're assaulted by lots and lots of paintings of women in all different roles. You've got women as virgins, you've got women as warriors, you've got women as killers, you've got women as victims. And this is a very famous painting of a woman in the Louvre. It's called The Bolt, because the man is bolting the door as he's got his arm around this woman. And you can look at this painting and determine, you can look at it any way you want, but if you can believe it, there is a book that was printed by the Louvre that's called Love in the Louvre, and this is the cover. Now, you can decide on your own whether you think this is love or whether you think it's something else. Maybe this is one reason why the Louvre doesn't like me. It depends on the day, but there are other powerful women, and I found a Wonder Woman in the collection of ancient Mesopotamia. And this is the thing about the Louvre. It's not just the paintings, it's objects, and sometimes small objects. So here's my Wonder Woman. There she is. She's tough, right? I mean, don't you want to take her with you when you go on the desert island? You know, put her in your back pocket. So I just want to read you a little bit of what I wrote about her. Look hard enough and you will find power women in the Louvre. I found mine in Mesopotamia, a 9.5-inch alabaster statuette of a naked woman who may be Ishtar, the great goddess from ancient Sumer, and the most important female deity of her time. Heavy gold earrings hang down to her shoulders. A thick choker rings her neck. A horned headdress characteristic of a goddess sits on her head. Her ruby eyes are shining and ringed in black. She was a goddess of contradictions, order and chaos, sex and death, beauty, power, justice. She represented both sexual love and fertility. But she was also a goddess of war, terrifying on the battlefield and unafraid of vengeance. An ancient Wonder Woman who prefigured the Amazons. Sex, power, and identity, all in one statuette. Ishtar is the sculpture in the Louvre I would take with me in a bag on my shoulder if I could choose just one. Okay, so you're into sexual fluidity, you know, which is like one of the topics of our time. Well, you can find this in the Louvre as well. Here is a hermaphrodite from ancient Mesopotamia, which underscores that this is an issue that has been with us for a long, long time. You're a traveler, you want to travel to some place that may even be close to you, like Iran. You know, I've spent a lot of my time as a journalist in Iran, and my second book is on Iran. And for years, the New York Times did these wonderful tours to places like Iran, and I would go as a kind of like comic relief with the tour. Thank you. You like to go? I like to go. What are you doing for the next 7 weeks? We're going touring. Yeah.
She'll go with you.
She'll go with me. Yeah. What do you do? I need a research assistant right now.
I'd be glad to.
Yeah. Anyway, the New York Times ran these really great tours, and I used to go along and give lectures. And whenever we would go to Persepolis, the tour guide would tell the Americans, if you really want to discover the ancient Persia and Emperor Darius, go to the Louvre. And this is what you will find in the Louvre, the most beautiful colored friezes. They come from another one of Darius's palaces named Susa, and you won't find this in Persepolis. But you will find in Persepolis postcards of what is in the Louvre. That's how much the tour operators in Persepolis appreciate what's in the Louvre. And this is truly one of my favorite places, and I tell everybody, if you're tired of the halls with the paintings and too many tourists, go to the Richelieu wing and look at the Persia collection. So, you know, how to conquer the Louvre? Well, I say choose your Louvre identity. You know, decide before you go into the Louvre, what kind of a visitor are you? I actually talked to somebody the other day who said he got through the Mona Lisa, Victory of Samothrace, and Venus de Milo in 12 minutes. That doesn't count the wait to get in, but could do it all in 12 minutes. So that's the sprinter. Now you can be the marathoner. I interviewed 2 people who visited every single room in the Louvre. It took them a year to get through all 400 rooms and go through. So that's the other extreme. But you know, maybe you're a pilgrim and you start out and you really study the Louvre and you look at guidebooks and you decide what are the works of art I really want to see, and not just, you know, a few famous paintings, but some of the other objects or works of art. Or, my identity is to be a flaneur or a wanderer. And one of the reasons I do this is I have a terrible sense of direction and I always get lost in the Louvre. I mean, even now, I took our cousin Wayne and Bernie to the Louvre like 3 weeks ago. Yeah, Suzanne's here, the Peppers are here. I took them to the Louvre, and my cousin Wayne had never been to the Louvre before. He had always avoided it because he said, I'll go to the Orsay, I'll go to the Pompidou, I'll go to the Rodin, but I will not go to the Louvre. I said, I'll take you to the Louvre, it'll be fine. Well, I got lost. So I'll never live that down, but it still happens even to people like me who've been through, been to the Louvre like, I don't know how many gazillion times. But the best thing to do is to just try to have fun in the Louvre. I mean, there's many ways to try to do it. We can talk about how to avoid the lines. But I thought I'd read to you just a little bit about my Louvre, if I may. Over time, I have learned that the Louvre is a world in which we can all find something in ourselves, of our lives, our thoughts, our actions. I have learned that each of us responds to a work of art in different ways, depending on our own history and our own preconceptions. The Louvre was created, after the French Revolution as a people's museum, open to the citizens of the world, and everyone has the right to enter and to have an opinion. Its works of art have taken me around the world and have shown me how history was made, how kings ruled, how lives were lived, how wars were fought, how myths were told. When I think of my Louvre, I think of the view from a window on a landing of Ayampé's long escalator in the Richelieu wing on certain summer afternoons when the sun bores through the angled glass of the pyramid and projects dapples of light onto the facade of the wing on the other side. I think of the quiet room in the floor wing where I can hold in my hands unframed engravings and drawings and pastels and watercolors by the world's most famous artists. And what about the complex gaze of Ingres's Grand Odalisque, the image on the cover of my book? She is a concubine wearing a turban and a ruby and pearl adornment in her hair. And she looks directly at us. Is she sad? Is she aloof? Or is she defiant, resisting her fate? And on that note, let's find that icon of American films of a certain epoch in the Louvre. Okay, everybody knows who that is, right? So I'm not going to ask. But who remembers what film it was?
Funny Face.
Funny Face, you got it. Okay, we've got another winner. There you go. And isn't that one of the most perfect movies, even though Fred Astaire was much too old for her? Excuse me. Okay, so that's Audrey Hepburn, and then here I am doing my imitation of Audrey Hepburn alone with the Victory of Samothrace. I began my presentation by telling you that I approached the Louvre as a lifelong journalist. I ended the book this way. As a journalist, I have learned how to talk to anyone about anything, from farmers and factory workers to presidents and kings. As a visitor to the Louvre, I also had to communicate with works of art. That meant seeing, really seeing. I learned this habit from my mother, and this is why I've dedicated this book to her memory. She was a stay-at-home mom who took me and my siblings to our art museum in Buffalo and taught us to sit and see the paintings around us. Later in life, she painted, not brilliantly, but good enough. At a eulogy at her funeral, my younger daughter, Gabriella, told a story. One time when we were painting together, Grandma told me there was blue in the bushes. I had no idea what she was talking about. But then I learned that there is more to art than what you see at first glance. And to capture an image, you must look at it hard and interpret it in various ways. This is how Grandma treated life. And as we observe and navigate our turbulent world, I urge you to stop and see, really see, and find blue in the bushes. Thank you.
years ago at the Boston Festival, when you were talking about an earlier book. First of all, do you think that the hermaphroditic figure was based on an actual being, or what do you think it was an imagined creature? And secondly, when you said 400 rooms in the Louvre, it reminded me of another New York Times reporter I spent a little time with, and the attention to sort of those kinds of details. And I'm curious if what your training and experience as a New York Times correspondent, reporter, how that maybe helped you influence the way you approach writing about the Louvre.
Oh, great. Did everybody hear the question? Yeah. This gentleman asked whether the hermaphrodite was real or imagined. It was a mythological figure, and it represented the power of women and man all in one. And again, I'm not an art historian, and I didn't respond to it as, oh gosh, I have to do an art history little lesson on, little research on this particular work of art. I just responded to it as seeing it powerful, just seeing the power of a woman and a man together. The second question was, how did my experience as a New York Times reporter help me in conquering the Louvre? I was glad I was a war correspondent before, and I worked in really hard places like Syria or Iraq or Iran, where you have minders. You don't know who to trust because you've got to be careful of who you talk to. You've got to be careful who you call on the phone, and often you couldn't go in a country like Iraq, for example, during the 1980s. You weren't allowed around the country by yourself. You had to be accompanied all the time by an Iraqi official who was assigned to you. Well, that's what happened in the Louvre.